Spirits at work again, folks. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show, and joined today by a beautiful cat and an amazing musician, Greg Johnson. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Can you talk about earlier in your career playing live? The kind of Joe Sample used to talk about what dog du jour he would have to deal with on a nightly basis walking into the clubs. McCoy would have to bang the piano back into tune. Can you talk about an experience on the bandstand early on when you didn't have your rig and you walked in and the maybe it was missing some black keys, and how you made it work?
I can remember there was a little bar we used to play here in town actually that had it was just this teeny tiny little stage, and I could only get like the just barest bones equipment in. The drummer would have to bring just a partial kit, and there was a lot of drinking going on, and people would be falling all over the stage, and every night was pretty much a challenge to see could we get through a whole night without there being an incident.
Was it acoustic music?
No, we were amplified, but not very much because, like I said, it was a teeny little hole in the wall.
What was the name of the place?
It's called the 4th Street Tavern, actually, it ran for years, and I think eventually they closed down. But I've heard they've reopened, so who knows? It might be a cool scene now. But it was mostly more than the equipment problems. It was more just getting folks to just chill and getting them to go along with playing, and and I was introducing music that I wasn't playing lots of standards and stuff. I've been a composer.
Oh yeah.
I've been doing my stuff the whole time, so it took a while to get people to roll with it, but eventually it was tight.
Well, with the piano though, there were nights where it was out of tune from the humidity or whatever. I mean, I'm just talking about a time when you had to turn something terrible and make it something transcendent.
Yeah, I can't remember actually playing a little room once. I don't recall exactly where it was, but the D below middle C was out.
Out.
It was not like out of tune. It was out.
It's just missing.
Out. And the way I play, it's like I do lots of big voicings in my left hand, and a lot of times I would need to do something like that, and it'd be like so I had to redo kind of what I did, and just create different voicings, and it was tough. I mean, I could have lived with maybe like a low B or something, but it was like that D, and so if I'm playing my song D minor blues, it made it tough.
Yeah, I mean those, when you don't have your own rig, the unpredictability of the bandstand is it can be somewhat treacherous. But where do you feel like your ears grew the most early on the bandstand? Can you talk about? Was there a mentor for you? So many of the cats that I've interviewed, they were real young and they had some of the original shaman cats like Jackie McLean as their mentors, or whoever it was, but ultimately their ears grew the most on the bandstand with those. Did you have a mentor that you can speak about?
I was blessed to. I grew up in Indiana, and I lived in Indianapolis for a long time, and at the time George Benson used to come through and sit and play in a little room, and we could go in for next to nothing and go listen to him. And wow. I was introduced to Mahavishnu Orchestra there. I can remember walking into a little auditorium and the doors open and Billy Cobham's blasting away, and just all of a sudden I'm like overwhelmed by this wall of sound that was something I'd never heard of before, and so I just dove into listening to like that band and Weather Report. This would be going back to the early 70s.
The most amazing time in music. How old were you at that point?
I was about 18, wow. 18 to 20, wow. So wow. Definitely formative years. And before that, I used to listen to lots and lots of Motown because that's what was going on. And making that, and then I loved rock and roll. Like everybody else, I did the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and so all those cats were happening. And then all of a sudden, like I say, so Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Keith Jarrett especially, showed up, and that changed everything. Probably as far as my personal playing, Keith Jarrett had the most influence. I would listen to, there was one record he had, I think it was called Fort Yahweh or something like that. I listened to that.
Dewey Redman's on that album, I think.
Ah, okay, all right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Explain Jarrett. Separate that. How was he more influential to you than not that Chick and those cats and Zoe weren't? But what was Jarrett? What caught your ear with Jarrett?
Well, the thing with Jarrett was like he could take a little sound, just like something like that,
Right.
and it would become this thematic thing that he would just build on and build on and build and build, and all of a sudden his left hand is picking up part of his right hand is picking up part, and then it seemed like there were two other hands that would show up because he could keep these different rhythms going, but still keep this amazingly sweet melodic thing happening through it. And I was so just overtaken by that. I'd say right around 74, somewhere around in there. Or whenever, like his Cone concert, where he did the solo work, where he started getting really serious about solo piano, that spoke to me the hardest. And it was probably at that point where I decided that all the casuals that I used to do, I'd get the calls to do
top 40 gigs, bar
all
mitzvahs,
those,
Mexican weddings, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So I thought, okay, well, that doesn't seem to be for me. That's just, I'm probably not going to be that good at it. I don't like it as much. And those guys have been doing it. So I started down that path of just general improvisation. And for years, I would just go without
I love it.
Without purpose. Or actually, the purpose was it just felt good. And then then over time, I started to hear that there were things that I liked and started to feel myself in the music and realize, well, I want to capture that and hang on to it. So then some of those early improvisations became compositions, and then from there it became more and more well-defined as far as what my brand or what my style is, and then I still love to improvise. So the band always, we'd get into a tune and then sometimes we could take it out for 15 minutes without getting tired.
Well, that is what I want to talk to you about, because there's cats like Rick Murata and Danny Korchmar who I've talked to a bunch, and they don't like sometimes in that setting because people are wanking it. If you go off for 15, so you have to keep the ideas essentially totally original all the time. If you're talking to younger cats out there who like to improvise too, but find themselves repeating ideas, how do you break out of that mold?
Well, part of my function in the band is to keep energy moving, because it is not fun. I do remember playing with a player once, and I won't name him. I don't have to name him. Who he just seemed like he was there. It was
a wank fest.
Yeah, that very politely put.
But he was there for himself.
But it was just So, and it was like it would get boring, it would get tiring. It's like, and his solos wouldn't necessarily go anywhere, or there wasn't feeling. So, but since then, for the most part, we try to interact and try to create something new. And even if we're playing, a tune that we've played 100 times, that 101st time still can have something special to it, or have a feeling, or have something different. So, the heads are going to be mostly the same every time, but after that, a lot of interaction can happen, and I love that, and that's what,
How would you break out of ruts, or is it all a subconscious thing with the going on for 15 minutes and never repeating anything? How would you? What would be your advice to cats that are like, man, I can't get out of this same. I'm playing the same chord progressions, or I just want to. How do you get out of that rut?
Well, I would say first, don't let yourself go there, because unless you're there because as you've gotten there as a result of what happened 10 minutes ago was so great that you just couldn't stop, and you can feel yourself building on. Otherwise, it's just pointless. It's stupid. You lose the audience. you lose the other band members, you even lose yourself sometimes. So I tried not to allow that to happen, and you know, and there have been times where I've cut something off perhaps sooner than it, you know, maybe it could have gone a little bit more and we could have gotten a little bit of juice out of it. But once I feel like we've gotten the most, you know, it's okay to be done and move on to the next tune.
People would love to see you perform. You want to play an original tune?
Sure.
Yeah, great. Go ahead. Why did you decide to? When did you decide to move to the Bay, and why?
Let's see. I moved here originally in the mid '70s. It's funny. I actually went to LA first from the Midwest. Drove down to LA. Had my
Maybe the studio scene aspirations.
yeah, I had, and actually at the time I was a drummer, which was my first instrument. Wow. So I had my drums in the back of my Volkswagen van, and I had my hippie van, and did the whole traditional everything. Went to LA and just did not like it. Just didn't like it. So I traveled around for a little bit longer, and then ended up settling in Bay. I used to work for this record company called Odyssey Records.
Sure.
And I used to love that. It was such a great, I wasn't playing it as much at the time, but it was just a great scene to be a part of. And
what was your kind of role? I mean, what were you?
I was their jazz expert.
So what does that mean? I mean, get me that gig. I mean, was it you were
it was so much fun
evaluating talent, kind of what should go on albums?
Well, no, it was more. This was like retail, so it was more. I'd go out and I'd hear great bands, and then we would bring them to the store and pump them, and work their records and decide what to sell, and just try to help turn on people to all the people that I love, which, like I said, Weather Report and all those guys.
Well, I'm really curious about the local cats. I mean, was it like Jules Broussard? Was it like Michael Howe? Like those? Was it Bishop Norman Williams?
Yeah.
I mean, those were already known. Those guys were already leaders in their own right. So,
right.
like, who were you bringing into the store? I mean, this is just unbelievable.
Yeah. So, I was fortunate enough with Odyssey I worked with them in Salt Lake City of all places. So it was great to bring bands in there, and then down in Phoenix, in Arizona. So there was a lot. I also brought in some. We had rock bands that came too. That's where I met the Tubes, and
wow.
I was in Las Vegas for a while, and so got to spend time with a lot of the bigger rockers. But that's also where I met Joe Sample and the Crusaders.
You did.
And
Wilton? You met Wilton?
Yeah, Wilton Felder.
Oh, bless that man.
Yes, and let's see. So who's the drummer?
Styx,
of course, Styx Hooper, and
Wayne Henderson.
So all those cats, as well as let's see. God, I'm trying to think of the guitar player, but I can't remember. But yeah, so I got to spend time and help connect them with the local scene in Las Vegas there. So it was a real fertile time for music. At that time, the Aladdin Hotel was doing great stuff. They would have
I cannot believe you just dropped that name. No, that was because the Grateful Dead used to play there, and they'd stay there.
Yeah. Oh wow.
I mean, so you'd have the heads were all upstairs busting into their rooms, but that was on the old strip. That was way before Vegas got all blown up.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. So what else were they doing? They were bringing the Crusaders in?
Yeah. So they had this series where they would have like concerts at 2 a.m. So I mean, I don't know how you can get yourself together to put on great shows at 2 a.m, but it happened. I saw tons of them. So it was fun. It was just almost 3 or 4 nights a week. There'd be somebody else great. And there was a whole range too. Like I said, I love even Country Willie and Waylon, I think, came there once, and Crystal Gale came.
It's all music.
It's great stuff. So those were fun times. It was real formative. It helped me just develop a deeper appreciation for beyond what I already knew. And then, like I said, so then it inspired me to. Once I came further west to develop my own work, and somewhere along the line, someone, I can remember having a conversation with this guy. His name was Mad Harold Caldwell. So this goes back. He was a drummer in Indiana. And Mad Harold was this really interesting guy. Had a really, really, really tight groove, but he played with his hi-hat really high.
I love it.
He's right-handed, so. I mean, his ride cymbal was like he had to reach for the sky. It was like, I've never seen anybody play like that. But, and of course everybody would ask him, what the fuck, man, and he'd be like, this is how I do what I do. And so he told me once, he says, you figure out what you do, and you do that, just do that. So that stuck with me. It took me a long time to actually get up the courage to do what I do. But, Matt Harold's always been in the back of my mind, so...
Is that cat still with us?
I tried to look him up a couple years ago, and I wasn't able to find him, so I honestly don't know. I mean, I hope so.
With what are your favorite drummers to play with? I mean, are there cats that play just backbeat, or do you want them to play a little bit more melodically more on the top of the kit, or keep what kind of drummers do you really enjoy playing with?
It's interesting. I've been blessed to play with some of the really amazing drummers, on the planet, and I've found myself being able to adapt. Probably my preference would be to have where there's where there's just that real solid groove that's really tight. I actually even like kind of pop grooves. I can remember playing with Gigi for many years. He's like, there's hardly anybody like Gigi, and he just always had this tighter than tight groove. There was a lot of other stuff going on, but it was hot. It was solid. It was rock solid. And so it was a challenge for me to keep it together, keep my stuff together. So I do like playing with drummers that are able to hold it down. I can remember playing with some who, they were trying to be so melodic that all of a sudden, the whole groove had gotten away from us, and we were suddenly 2 measures ahead of where we should have been. It was just like, well, that's an exaggeration, but
no, I dig it.
The point is we were creating chaos, and we thought we were the shit, but we weren't.
A cat that's tuning in right now. Do you know Babatunde Lee?
Yes, not well, but yeah.
He was here. He was around these parts. When did you actually move to the Bay?
I moved here 1977.
Right. So he was just becoming a leader at that point. Did you get a chance to play with OJ Akamode? Or any of the? I guess what's been the closest thing to a world band that you've been in?
I've played with a lot of. Let's see, with. I could say I opened for Spyro Gyra, but that's not the same as playing with Spyro Gyra.
It's all right.
I've opened for, I've played with, what's his name? I opened for Pete Escovedo once or twice. I've played with a lot of great players. Once I made that decision to become a composer, it's always been on me to develop my bands. So, I've been more a band leader than a sideman for about the last, almost 30 years now, 28 years, I guess. And that's been a really fun experience. But like I said, I've played with amazing players all the time. There's always great guys that are world-class players.
You bring cats in and let them do what they do best?
I try to. I try to. I figure my job is to, I write these compositions, and then I open them up for the guys to help arrange them, to put their stuff on them, put their seal on them. So, there's been some really great experiences that way.
People are asking if, based on on records that you make with you as a leader, how similar are the live performances as opposed to the actual studio recording of it? Do you stretch more? Is it different?
We do stretch more. On some of those tunes, it definitely stretch more. I've done some recordings of solo work where the songs end up, when I do them live, end up being very different because I'm improvising at that moment as well.
With a band or just solo?
It's solo.
Yeah. Okay, that's different.
Yeah. So, and then our band works. I try to walk that balance between, I want people to, when they buy my records, to recognize what they are. And when they come to show, if they have our CD, they recognize what it is, but also feel like they're getting something in addition to that. It's not just note for note what they bought. So I don't know. It's hard to know whether or not I go too far one way or another, but it's felt good.
Well, hopefully the audience is, maybe they know or don't know, but it it's that they're locked in. Did you? I mean, Freddie Hubbard's from Indianapolis.
Yes.
So is Phil Ramlin.
Yes.
I think those guys are a little bit older than you.
A little bit older. I got to see Freddie. I wasn't a player at the time, but I did get to see him back there. The biggest single moment was getting to see Wes Montgomery. So that was,
I mean, what was that? Just, I mean, the dude was like a concrete mixer. He had a day job, eight kids, and just a brilliant. What stood out to you about
that's
his?
Amazing, too.
Because the records are a lot of the records are slick. They're good. I mean, they're just produced. But in live, it must have gotten kind of greasy.
Well, when I saw him, I was just in awe. Just the chops. Just okay. Here's what I can do. Really? How are you able to do that?
And then the feel too. I mean, there was just an emotive quality.
Yes, yeah.
There wasn't a sterility to it.
I've always been a big, I get teased about being a crybaby, but but as a composer, and this is part of why I made that decision I wanted to write, was because I wanted to write what I felt, and then when I'm playing it, I'm feeling what was there. So when I go to shows where there's where there's room for interpretation of another player, and I can feel the story that they're trying to tell, that just hits me hard, and I love it. And those kind of experiences stick with me. So, not as much. Don't like as much precise tacticians or precision players, and I'm not as impressed with massive chops as I am impressed with massive chops that are understated because they're playing what's necessary to tell the story.
That sounds like Wes Montgomery. That's Wes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Can you play another piece? People are having a ball, man.
Oh, cool. Cool, yeah, absolutely.
You can tell the peeps what it is, what
all right. Well, that last song was called As You Are. And I wrote that in Paris, of all places. This piece, let's see. So this goes back to, when I used to play at this little bar, the little blues bar, and people would say for years, "Hey, man, do you do any blues?" I'm like, no, I don't do blues.
Wow.
I'm not a blues guy. I'm not feeling it. But finally, I wrote this tune called D minor blues, which starts out bluesy, but
and you got the D minor key.
yeah, this time I got it.
talk. What keeps you? Does the music keep you alive? Keep you together?
Yeah. I've been involved with working with younger players now. So I have a lot of students, and that's it keeps me both emotionally reinvesting and.
How do you get them to not sound like you?
Oh boy, that's like the best question
Good.
ever.
Good.
That is absolutely
because it's
the best
important because
question.
there's a lot. I mean, unfortunately, that teaching is not. It's occurring probably one-on-one. It's not on the bandstand. So break that down because there's a homogenization of sound that's really driving me over the edge these days.
Yes, so first off, it's important because I feel like I know that I'm influenced by many people, but I don't believe I sound like anyone. I have my elements. So it's important to me to take that fundamental thing and pass it to my students. That it's great that you want to maybe check out big voicings or unusual voicings or or go further than me or less than me, whatever it is. But whatever you do, don't do exactly what I do for the reasons that I do it. Just don't do that. Because the world doesn't necessarily need another me. It needs you to be you. And so I'm blessed. I've got some guys out there that have their bands and they're rocking, and I listen to them go. It's like I can hear little elements of me, but not that much.
So,
So
do
cool.
you make it clear to them your intentions of
Yes.
and all that? So
Yes,
you tell them that.
Absolutely, I tell them.
And
one
don't
of-
do that, and then
it's one of the
find your
first
own
things.
path.
Yeah, and in fact, if I hear something that I know is just like that's just too close of a just a way that I might do a lick, I'll just point that out. Like, maybe that doesn't sound as much, it doesn't sound like everything else that you're doing. It sounds like something that you just picked in and put it into a mix, and that's not really such a good thing. So I think that's one thing I feel confident I've done a good job with the number of players that I've worked with over the years to
They
help
have their
them
own voice.
develop
They're finding their own voice.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about is like the germ of a song for you. Where does that emanate from?
That's come about in different ways, and in fact, I wrote this one song called "Mornings 4 to 6" because a lot of times I'm laying in bed, it's the middle of the night, it's quiet, and just an idea or a couple of notes will present themselves, and so I have to get up and go to the piano and knock it out a little bit, and sometimes there has been one time where a song came out pretty fully formed, but most times it's this thing I call it just of unearthing, of discovering.
Absolutely.
That there's a message there that's being that's waiting to be told, and my job is just to discover it. So I don't.
If you lay in bed, then you forget it. You got to get it out.
Yeah, I get up. Yeah, my sweetheart knows. I get up.
Mornings 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Thank you to your sweetheart for letting you get up early and do that. That's so beautiful, man. It's lilting. You know, can you just talk about a time? There's only two letters that separate magic and music, and Billy Cobham. I've done a number of interviews with him, and he never did a drug in his life, and he talked about a time with the MO, with the orchestra, as he calls it.
Nice.
And they were exhausted. He was exhausted. They were all tired of the back end of the second set of the last show of the tour, and he wound up seeing himself on the side of the stage. He had he left his physical body on the bandstand, and he was actually seeing himself play on the side of the stage. And I just want to know how close you've come to, if you can talk about a time when you've left your physical body on the bandstand.
Well, there have been many times where I've been in the middle of a song and I find myself so deep in it that I open my eyes and not know where I am. I'm just like, yeah, my hands are still functioning, so it's okay.
Wow.
You know, they're still doing what they're supposed to do, but suddenly it's like, take a breath. Wait a minute. We're, So, not to the extent of being, off to the side, but definitely.
How do you square the circle on that when you actually go into a deeper level of consciousness, because your fingers are still cooking? I mean, you just don't know where you are, and you're on live stage.
Yes. Well, fortunately, I sort of say it's never been bad. It's never been too bad. It's
a phenomenon, though.
But it is, and it's once again, like so many things, it's a balancing act. Like it's a sweet thing because that notion of being so into the moment that I feel no physical presence feels wonderful. Yet at the same time, I'm interacting with a room full of people and the people on stage with me, and I have I have the joy of actually being present for that, so I don't want to lose touch with that. So, so I try to stay with it, and with what we do, a big part of it is our actual direct communication.
Conversation.
Right? Because when we're playing, when I'm playing with Rob, bass player, or some of the other guys, we're definitely having a conversation. So if I'm not really doing my part, then I don't know. So it's tough because I know it, particularly when I was younger, and I imagine a lot of young players think like they want to they play and just go off somewhere and just stay there and just get lost in the music, and yeah, there is a romance to that, but I would say that being fully present for a singular experience with a bandmate and knowing that it's happening at that moment is actually better.
Completely agree. Just before I let you go, I'd love you to just give a message of inspiration to your musical brothers and sisters around the world as we head into a new year.
I think it's important now more than ever, and I probably would have said the same thing a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. Music is such an important part of how the world works. Creativity is.
The vibrations allow. I mean, you go to New Orleans, you can feel that vibration, and that's higher than other. I guess what I'm getting at, and I don't mean to cut you off. It's just, guys like Larry Willis, from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, most ridiculous piano player of all time. He says the culture is being stifled in this country, and I just want you to, you talk about music being a completely essential component to evolution. How do you, when the vibrations are low, culture is stagnant, and that's kind of where, at least in this country, that's how I feel. So how do you transcend that?
This might sound a little too normal, but I take it as a prime directive. It's my responsibility. It's what I was brought here to do that. It's important that I do that. So, if I don't do my part, then what am I here for? So we have to take the time. We have to figure out some way to cut through regardless of what the circumstances, whether it be political or cultural or economics or whatever it is, we have to cut through and get it done.
Love you, Greg Johnson.
Thank you.
Thanks for being part of the Jake Feinberg
My
Show.
pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Love always, everybody. We'll see you later.